Welcome everybody to the Involve Show. We are going to start this panel. So some of you, if you have read the program, it's a panel about climate change, especially here in Aotearoa. I'm not going to speak too much, but just a bit of a disclaimer. Safe space, we are aware of certain events that have happened, not only here in Aotearoa, but across around the globe. So we just want to ensure your safety, and if you do need to take 5, safe space. Welcome to our panel. I won't do as much talking, but I would like to open the floor just to introduce yourselves, and welcome.
Cool. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Tom Wilson tōku ingoa. My name's Tom Wilson. I'm the Chief Science Advisor for the National Emergency Management Agency. We've had our stand here today. I'm not sure if you've seen Stan the dog floating around. He's been, if you approach him nicely, he might pull out some dance moves for you. So do go and say hello. I live down in Ōtautahi, Christchurch. I live there with my wife and 2 little kitties. My background is I started out as a volcanologist, so was interested in how volcanoes erupt. But now I'm much more interested around how do we protect ourselves and society from natural hazards and disasters and so on. I'm really, really grateful to be here. It's a huge honour, and I just wanted to acknowledge everybody that's been affected by the floods here in Auckland and Cyclone Gabrielle and everything else that's going on around the world at the moment. So it's been a really difficult time for Aotearoa and many other communities. But just a really big thank you as well for the organisers and everything that's going on. I can assure you this is so much more fun than a science conference. I'm so happy to be here, so kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Kelly Francis tōku ingoa, e noho atu ana ki Māngere, ko Ngāpui tuku iwi, and I am here representing a charity that I built 7 years ago, and that charity's named Whenua Warrior. We build gardens to feed community, teach community to feed themselves and empower them to feed each other. And our whole goal really is to have an edible organic garden accessible by every New Zealander. I've clearly said that a few times, eh? One of our major goals that we have at the moment is to build 600 gardens edible across South Auckland. We're up to about 432 this year, and we expect to be finished that project by the end of September, where hopefully we'll get some more funding and then do it again. I have a massive passion for building community capacity. I like to believe that community connection is going to heal a lot of the issues that we face today, and I believe that when we concentrate on food, there's no way of being challenged negatively, because we all need food to survive, so that naturally makes us all equal. I also think that climate change, historically or traditionally, we get told that climate change is at the responsibility of people who are doing massive harm to space, to our land, our water, our air, our people. But I have a quiet secret believing that every individual has a way of being able to positively affect space as well, which is the reason why we build edible organic gardens in the back of your homes, because it's teaching you as an individual how you can put in a little bit of mahi to benefit your table first, benefit your whānau first, and then move wider to your hapu, your iwi, and your hapori. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I've got a nephew, he's 9. He inspires me to get up every morning to continue my mahi, and a niece who's 5. And yeah, ngāpui all day. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora koutou, ko Lourdes tōku ingoa. I hail from Ngāti Kahungunu, Samoa and Cook Islands, so all of the best places you can be from. I'm not as impressive as these two now, listening to the both of them introduce themselves, but I'm a student and I've got history in politics, if you can say politics, and also climate activism. So sort of a bunch of random stuff. Also worked at the zoo randomly. So there's a bunch of just doing what needs to be done. So yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Beautiful. So we have a scientist, we have a grassroots practitioner, and we also have a student, a young person who's going into politics. Now, you may wonder, young people, climate change. There is a movement. We do have young people who advocate in this space, and we want to give credit to them. But I just want to, you guys, so Kelly, I know you spoke a little bit around what climate change means for you in your practice. For either of you, are you able to speak to what climate change for young people means in your guys' spaces, if that's okay?
In my experience, it's been a very stressful thing to think about and work around because there's this thing called climate anxiety, but I reckon there's a lot of other terms you could use it for. But yeah, at the essence of it, I believe that it's a very pressing matter and it's almost overwhelming. So it's sort of just working around how we can actually manageably and safely work around climate change and climate action.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thanks.
I guess for me, the challenge is we know that the atmosphere has been warmed, and it's warming at a rate that we've never really seen in the last 10,000 years or so. And so what that means is that when we have these big weather events, they're going to be more intense, and they might start to affect areas that haven't been affected in the past, and that stresses me out. But it comes at a time with almost unprecedented complexity, where we've got so much coming at us. We have climate change, we have disruptive technologies, we have a lot of big pressing issues that are facing us, both as a society, communities, and as individuals. And that's really intense. I think the challenge that's all within us is how do we navigate through that, and what are the ways that we can empower ourselves to find some of those solutions? What can we do? And I think for me, for at least in the emergency management sector, we're so small. We've got a really, really important role to do. We are that safety net for so many people, and often interacting with individuals on their most challenging of days. But there's very few of us. So the way I think we want to rephrase it a little bit is that we're a sector of 5 million people. All of us are emergency managers, and we know that the emergency management sector is not connecting with youth like it needs to be. So that's one of the big reasons why we're here today, is to reach out to you. We're keen to connect. We want a partner. We know we're not doing the best job, and so we're keen to learn. And where's that innovation? Where's that leadership? And how can we support each other? Cool.
Kia ora. Sorry, I just forgot to mention Slido. If you have some dying hard questions that you want to ask, feel free to scan the QR code and it will pop up, because I am more than happy to ask our questions from our anonymous fans.
Ai, tika, ngā mihi kia koutou e kōrero tia. Apartheid for me, being in this youth sector and also working with rangatahi. For me, when I heard about this panel and heard about we had to have a kōrero about climate change, for myself, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, yeah, it's been raining, yeah, it's sunny, and it's, but what are the things that we as kaihāpai rangatahi, but also for rangatahi, what are the things that we can look up or research or study to help in that, build our knowledge?
Shall I start? I think one of the big things is we want to equip ourselves with knowledge, and being aware of what we're likely to face is a key part of it. Also knowing where that knowledge sits and what are the networks and groups that we can connect with. There's a lot of great resources that have been produced with the Ministry for the Environment. It's got some really useful resources around what are we likely to see as our changing climate. But more importantly, what can we do to help try and reduce the effects of climate change? Or what are those key decisions that we need to be making or starting to think about? One of the areas, if you're not keen on connecting there, your local council or areas like that usually have a lot of that information too. But I think there's such an opportunity with the challenge is so great that we need to see where that innovation is coming from. So the opportunity for having those discussions with your friends and whānau and raising that to drive that discussion is really, really critical part.
Cool. Well, for me, every solution leads back to build a garden. So just build a garden, you know, honestly. Feeling hungry, build a garden. Feeling sick, build a garden. Wanting to know what carbon equestration looks like as an individual inside South Auckland, build a garden. And it realistically is like that. Even if we look at some of our rangatira in my world, like Tāmaki, who does a lot of work with, you know, the moon, Professor Rangi Mātamua, who does a lot of work with the stars and stuff. Like, building a garden teaches you enough as an individual to start your climate change actions. It allows you to learn off plants, off soil. It teaches you as well as feeding you as well, so there's a benefit for you straight after that. But what I've learnt on this journey is that there are parts of the work that you stick with, and there's parts of the work that just don't interest you and you don't ever attach to. So there is something that you're already passionate about that has something to do with climate change. And if you just dig into that part and learn everything that you can, and then become the expert, you're the one who can then change the, or create a climate change action based on something that you're passionate about. And build a garden.
Building a garden. We're going to build a garden.
Yes.
I think we're really lucky that there are a lot of Indigenous climate groups that already have a lot of resources, particularly kōrero I find a lot more beneficial and easier to sort of process. A lot of them are very articulate and good at really breaking down what's actually going on and has been going on for quite a while. So just to bring it back to the first question, young people, yes, are going to be facing the brunt of climate change, but there are certain demographics of younger people who have already been facing it for years. And a lot of them have been talking and very generous in sharing their knowledge and what's been going on. Social media is a really great place where you can follow a lot of those people and find out what's actually going on the ground when you can't see it here in our own cities. But once you start listening to how they see it in their cities, you'll be seeing it in your own as well.
Ka pai, we've got a lot of questions coming up on the...
Yeah, I'd like to pay respects to the first question that came in. How do we encourage our rangatahi into this space, right? So I'm just aware that we do have rangatahi, you know, maybe just always on their phone and just actually not being in tune with what's happening around them. Kia ora.
I think one of the opportunities, sorry to keep bringing this back to the emergency management system, but one of the things there is it's such a diverse challenge, and it needs all people. So having whatever your background or your skill set or knowledge base, we've got a place for you. We need people that can connect, people that can talk to anyone, that can translate some of those challenging things and often challenging situations. So there's a lot of really important roles that we want people coming into that space to work together. I think the other thing we were just chatting about before we came on the panel is one of the things we've been using a lot of is simulations. So what might a flood look like in your community? What might you do? And put it back and make it a challenge to work through. The challenge I think we're all in is we want to make things fun and engaging, but it's a really challenging topic and can be quite scary and confronting. So again, keen to learn, keen to connect, get the ideas, and we've already picked up heaps from this conference already, which has been amazing.
Sure is. I think it comes back firstly to like when you encourage yourself to do something, it stems from a foundation of your belief and your passions and your values and the things that you find important. But one thing that we forget about as a organisation or as a big group of people is that when you think something, it stems off a value that you have, and that value has come from things that you alone have experienced. And so that experience has led you to that thought, and in most cases, you might be the only person in the world that has that thought. So when we look at encouraging rangatahi to do anything really, let alone working with our climate, working with our whenua, our mana. They might be the only person in the whole world that has that thought. And if you're the only person in the whole world that has that thought, you're the only person who's going to start that action. If you're the only person that starts the action but decides not to, then that doesn't get done and it stays not done. So the negative of not doing that action means that it'll never get done. The positive is you get it partially started possibly, and then you build up your iwi, and then you find your purpose, and you find your resources, you find the support, you get the foundation a little more solid, and then you build on that idea and complete that action. But the question was, how do you encourage rangatahi to do it, right? Well, I think that starts with building the foundation within the rangatahi and making sure that they're supported to safely explore solutions that they have based on their own thoughts. Boom.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Just to feed off from that, because I know, Lourdes, you spoke about kōrero, and I know we have amazing youth workers in the space that can hold space. They know how to hold talanoanga as well. Are you able to speak more into that around the groups that you've seen or maybe studied?
Yeah, I think that one of the safer ways to get involved in climate action is actually finding where youth already are and going through there, sort of front-lining into a brand new group that you've never been a part of before. And you're the only young person or the only person of your demographic is a bit rough. So either bring someone with you or go where there are already people who can support you safely. Some of the spaces I've worked in or around before include Te Tiriti, who are based up here in Tāmaki, and that's a group for Indigenous peoples in climate change. They came out of the need for an Indigenous delegation to go to COP, as well as Pacific Climate Warriors, who function under 350.org. But if you're looking for sort of places that are local to you, I understand that a few of you might be from around the motu, just go to the Waitangi Tribunal, go online and see who's actually fighting for their land back, because you'll find that there's a lot going on right now, and you can see how you can support them there. I don't know how that necessarily, I don't really know about people being encouraged into joining a space. It's more so you finding something that you're passionate about. I don't think it is a very encouraging pathway, but yeah, as long as you're doing it with another person, just at least one other person, as long as you're safe, that's the way to do it.
We've got one question. Dana, if it's highlighted, that's for me to ask? Oh, sorry. What is being done to shift the expectation of youth fixing these problems, if it is our youth?
What is being done to shift the expectation of
Young people fixing everything.
Oh. Is there an expectation of young people fixing everything?
Yeah, the sort of like, oh, we like fucked it all up and like, but you guys are so great and you speak so well and you'll fix it, sort of thing.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
I've got to find some young people to help me fix stuff then.
I'll find a better question. Would love to hear about the importance of unpacking racism, capitalism, and its impact on the climate activist space. What are your thoughts? Sorry for the long question.
Do you want to go for that?
And that's quite deep, so safe space.
I think it'd be easy to give the lotto numbers then answer that one. What is it? Racism, capitalism, and climate activist space in Aotearoa.
It's vital.
Tom?
You can't have one without the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God.
Hey, can you guys write easy questions, please? No, I'm joking.
Well, fundamentally, like, the reason we've got climate change is because of racism and capitalism. So if we don't unpack those two, we're not going to be able to solve climate change. Yeah. I didn't make that up. Other people have said that a lot better than I have. I'm just repeating what has been told to me, but yeah.
Just based on previous partai, if we think about our Indigenous people and the land that is being occupied and climate change, are any of you able to speak to that? What does that mean for our Māori?
I'll give the land back.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, that'll do it, eh? Give the land back, because realistically we were the last ones to utilise this space to benefit the people and the land, right? With no other goals in place, it was people and land, so give back to Māori. There's also, you can use all these fancy words and stuff like systemic change and all that kind of thing, but realistically we could be looking at the governance structure that New Zealand is in, Pacific Islands, all of the spaces that have thriving Indigenous space, and we could be going, government, or we could look at the thriving Indigenous governance solutions, and as an example, Rarotonga has a Araki system. I know Samoa has an Araki system as well. And instead of focusing all our yuck energy on stuff, we could go into respecting the Araki ways and finding ways to manage that space with the solutions that we have. In January, built 15 gardens inside Rarotonga. First time we've been international, at the back of homes inside Rarotongan space, and then the Araki system was introduced to me. That's where I learnt about it. And it's just respecting what we do have still thriving in those spaces as well, rather than just looking at the other stuff. But yeah. Ooh, that's a hard question.
First and foremost, I'm Pākehā, so I want to acknowledge that. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware.
He's a professor too.
Okay, now we've got that out of the way.
Is this the right couch?
But I'm going to get nerdy, so shocking. I think this one of the really special parts of being a scientist or anything in Aotearoa is the interweaving of knowledge that we have, both scientific and mātauranga, and that's a really exciting time. There's a lot of challenges there, and it needs to be entered into one with a lot of caution and respect. But I think particularly when it comes to climate change and the issues that we're likely to see and are seeing today, is that those deep challenges that have been discussed already and some of the really shameful parts of our country's history are going to be exacerbated again. Where we're starting to talk about managed retreat and needing to move out of, or potentially needing to move out of some areas, well, that puts real pressure on land and who has access to it, who has control of it, and the governance issues around that are considerable. That will be a real challenge, and it's one that we are seeing playing out after Cyclone Gabrielle and the anniversary weekend floods. But I think to try and end that little on a slightly positive note, I think the opportunities there around the weaving knowledge systems together, there's real opportunity and some exciting innovative solutions which are starting to come to the fore. And I think that's a real challenge for us and an opportunity for us going forward. Kia ora.
Yes, just drawing back to how even Cyclone Gabrielle and the immediate response, and just recognising that, yes, a lot of our services, social services, our youth workers and social workers helping with that response, whether it was kai boxes, delivering whatnot. Where was I going with that? What do you guys, did you guys have any experience in that with your kaupapa, or I guess with Nima, even yourself, Kelly?
Yeah, we, well, this kind of leads off a bit, but the climate change thing is becoming very obvious in urban spaces. My personal experience was, I live in Māngere, and half of Māngere is built, unfortunately, on a landfill, and then the other half's built on swampy lands. So the entire space kind of got hit real hard and real bad, long story short. I myself lost my apartment because of the way that the developers had come in, taken out 2 four-bedroom houses, and then replaced it with 80 one-bedroom units. And how that space changed initially was that the land was flattened, and so the water just wiped it all out. But by the time that happens, and I don't feel sorry for my landlords, ka roha, but I don't, they've invested into a space that shouldn't have been there in the first place. That should have been harakeke, that should have been riverways, waterways, it should have been the swampy area that it is quite obviously supposed to be, because that's where the water's supposed to go, right? But this is how we in 2023 get affected by decisions that are made by developers in like early 2000s. That's how we get affected by it 20 years later. It's also how people my age kind of take for granted the pretty house that gets put up on that corner over there. Yeah, it's not matching with what the land requires from the land. And it's not matching either with what the people require from the land. So, you know, if we were to have someone that made decisions on housing and included what the land is clearly telling you is going to happen, then that would prevent things like emergency disaster and stuff. But yeah, that's just slightly off topic. But
Lourdes?
Not really.
Did you? I'm going to ask one more question from the screen, and I'm going to release Matua Mita into the crowd, just in case there is someone who would like to ask one of our panelists a question. I'm just trying to look at some of these questions, whether they're youth focused. How would you suggest we approach climate kōrero with climate deniers?
If it's not necessary, don't waste your time. Just stop.
And there you have
There
it.
you go.
Anyone else want to add to that? Okay. I love this. How do you all embed mā tauranga Māori into your practice? Now, we spoke about how there is Indigenous knowledge. Knowledge is power. Whakaaro mai.
Professor, or should I go first?
Happy either way.
Okay, mā tauranga Māori, how do I bring that in? It starts with the tikanga and the kawa. So our trust is built up on some pretty hearty values. All the tangas basically kaitiakitanga, manakitanga, mohiotanga, all of the tangas. But it also comes down to like when we build a garden in your backyard, you've told me you're ready to start your gardening journey, right? So I've turned up to your house, we're building this garden, I've built the box, bought the soil, bought the seedlings. We're going to sit down with you and your whānau, we're going to pull you out of your whare, and we're going to sit down with you and we're going to teach you about what's happening with the planting and the food and all of the beautiful things that this kai is going to provide for you, and we're going to encourage you via that kai. We're also going to teach you about the Huaparakore principles, which is the only Indigenous food verification system in the whole world. And it was created by Te Waka Kaiora in Poneke. So we're gangsters when it comes to food, and what we're doing is not letting that inner gangster die, basically. And we're bringing that out in your backyard and getting you to a point where you can't imagine anything except the most amazing kais coming out of your garden, which is connection beyond, here's your garden box, and I believe that connection is what we're missing. I believe that connection comes directly from the heart of Te Ao Māori. And that connection, once you have it, I teach it to you via food, but there's people who teach it via weaving, via rongoa, via native planting. There's your nan that teaches you through fry bread, so that ultimate connection, I think, is the way that we introduce mātauranga and connection through whenua o Aotearoa Trust. Yeah, then.
That was lovely. That was awesome. guess one of the things that we're trying to, so NEMA is it's a new organisation, maybe 3-4 years old, but one of the things that we're trying to really embed is evidence-based approaches for the decisions and activities that we do. And so one of the areas that we've tried to, we're on the journey of, is we facilitate or host different science advisory panels. And so one of the areas that we're really trying to expand is not just having Western science on those panels, but Māori scientists and Mātauranga experts starting to come into those panels or even have their own panels for ensuring that there's advice coming into the emergency management system. It's a journey where there's absolutely no way that we have it perfect, that's for sure, but we're hoping that we're taking some good first steps in that direction. I think the other area that we are putting a huge amount of focus into is capability and capacity development, training our young people around what is the appropriate knowledge and our understanding of how these things work, both with different knowledge systems, is a really critical part of being a scientist or emergency manager or whoever it is here in Aotearoa. So that's a huge focus for us as well.
And when you were referring to panels, are these both youth advisory panels as well as your panels of professionals as well?
No, at the moment it's just professional panels, scientists on there, so to speak. But I guess one of the examples, and it's not quite in the climate space, but some of you might be familiar with the Taupo volcano was unrestful last year. So one of the important parts of that was there was Western science informing some of the decision making, but it was really important to partner with with mana whenua and with some of our Māori volcanologists to ensure that was coming through to inform decision making as well. So like I said, it's absolutely not perfect, but steps in the right direction I think are starting to happen.
I just saw one question pop up. Do you know any youth-led organisations around this kaupapa that you would recommend or that you've worked with, maybe not, in Christchurch?
Yeah, well, Te Ara Whātū and Pacific Climate Warriors are some pretty go-to ones. They're not explicitly youth-led, but they do happen to be. I don't know of any explicitly youth-led climate groups that are also Indigenous, but yeah, those are the ones that I can recommend. And from there, they could point you in the directions of ones that are more applicable to you or your sector.
Yeah. I'm claiming some friendship here. I'm friends with Te Puangamara. So yeah, Te Puangamara, they do awa restoration through the Puhunui Reserve and Puhunui River. They're based up in Wiri, just behind the Gaulon Roscommon Road. And they're gangster. They do some cool stuff. Like they got Conservation Week this weekend. They're planting up with, they got politicians out there planting up native trees along the river. They've got corporates from different areas going out there picking up rubbish and, and then hosting it, meaning rangatahi led. So the rangatahi want kai. So, they've got kaimahi that organise the kai and organise everything to make sure that it's a space where everyone can do work to benefit the land and the people, I think, is the most important thing. And they started off as wharekura o Manirewa kids, and now they're running their own kaupapa. They've created, with a scientist in AUT, Andy, they've created a water testing kit that doesn't require chemicals. They've won awards. I think one of them's finished their bachelor's of something. And then a couple of them had kids. So that's the next generation, But yeah, still rangatahi-led, supported heavily by council and different government spaces, and being able to introduce tikanga Māori via that native planting as well, from a rangatahi perspective. So it's cool. Yeah.
That's cool.
No, yeah, definitely tautoko ngā kōrero. Te puanga mara, honestly, these rangatahi are next level. I've done some rangatahi mahi with them, and honestly, we go for a walk and they're like, did you know that plant, that's a da-da-da-da, and this is how you're going to do it, and I'm just like, holy hecka. The mahi they do is amazing, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to go out And if you do have any pātai whānau, just raise your hands and I'll come to you.
Kia ora.
If we don't, you can still read off there.
Easy. Aroha mai, if you feel like some of this pātai has allowed you to be repetitive, I saw this question. How do you personally manage climate anxiety and your general mental health and well-being, being so passionate in this space?
Oh, super poorly. But I guess, I mean, I've sort of taken a break from being directly involved in the sort of climate action space because it's super like Pākehā dominated, and so all of the work we do is super Pākehā dominated. So I've sort of focusing more on the Indigenous issue side, but it's all a part of the same kaupapa, it's all a part of the same fight. So just really, if someone knows how to do this, please tell me, but learning how to say no is really important, and learning how to set boundaries, especially because living within a capitalist society, everything is very go, go, go. So being able to take the time for whakawhanaungatanga and getting to know people rather than working to deadlines. Deadlines are never going to help us actually solve the problem. So just sort of take your time and be safe.
Oh, yeah. I cry a lot. But sometimes on purpose, to manage that. Because when you're in the community and you see the community issues, and it's a very realistic thing, and like I've got youth leaders in the crowd, so I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You see things that you can't expect of yourself. You do things you can't expect of yourself, and then when you're in front of it and you do the thing to solve the thing, you then go, oh, whew, that was a hard one. So yeah, managing mental health with all that is it's fancy words, but yeah, just I think celebrating the things that you can get accomplished, and when you get them accomplished, straight away celebrate it. I think that's one that would help with the mental health, and not just jump onto the next thing. You know, I've had youth leaders who get contacted by their rangatahi at 2 a.m. with an emergency, and they get up and they, you know, go to that rangatahi. And I've had major issues happen in front of many of us in the community, and what happens is just what our values lead us to believe is the best answer. So you kind of just got to manage it as you go, but yeah, poorly. I'm on the poorly side.
That makes three of us. I guess a slightly different take on it, in that I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm in central government and in the big system, the big machine, and that comes with it's in some ways it's a real privilege, and I hold that very dearly because it's an important role. But it's also incredibly frustrating because it's a great big machine that's, you know, often it's like a big super tanker. It takes a lot to get it to move, and that's real. I find that really frustrating at times. I think for me at least, it's very similar. It's probably poorly managed, but family is critical. Lots of talk, thrashing it out sometimes, having some good friends, and for me at least, having a couple of good mentors who I can really openly, honestly, be super vulnerable with. Sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's anger or whatever, but being able to connect and have that understanding, I find that really helpful. For what it's worth, I've found this day in particular extremely restorative. It's been a really tough 6 months with the severe weather events for everyone, but I've found a lot of energy out of this space, so thank you.
Yeah.
Mita?
Right, ngā mihi, we got a pātai over here.
Kia ora. How can we as people journeying alongside young people and supporting them, what's one thing you think we can do to support our young people either taking action or in their well-being, in their climate anxiety? What do you think is one thing that we can do?
Build a garden.
Build a garden?
Yeah, no, that's my answer.
Yeah. I always really appreciate when, and one of them is in the room, but when my mentors, they stop me and they just like make me a cup of tea and tell me to like calm down. Like actually having someone else tell me off for working too hard is really beneficial. So yeah, if people would buy me food and sort out my transport, that would be like super awesome.
Is that a Big Mac or a McChicken?
I guess for me, knowledge is power. Trying to understand, what's the problem, what are some of the ways that we can connect and what those solutions might be?
Mita, do you have another question?
Yes, we got another pātai.
Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou te wānau, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. This question is mainly aimed at our te hunaranatahi e noho ana, e rawe o kōrero pērā i te wahine pūrotu meki. So my pātai is, how can your iwi, your hapu, best assist you to achieve your wawata and your moemoe, so your dreams and your aspirations? Tēnā koe.
I don't know, to be honest. I feel like it's a super complex thing. Often I don't really know how to ask for support or know what support I actually need. I think it is just that sort of, I really lean on like intergenerational knowledge and intergenerational support. I understand youth are at the like front line and the brunt of everything most of the time, but separating anything by generation can almost be super damaging, especially in the climate action space. You have to lean on your elders, you have to get their knowledge. Take it with a grain of salt if you have to, but at least knowing and hearing from them is so important. And I think just being able to talk to people who understand what I'm going through is one of the most vital things. So that's my answer for now, but I'll let you know if I find anything else.
Beautiful, intergenerational collaboration,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, what time is it? Okay. Just to bring things back to a positive space. Does anyone else have a pātai? Shop
Over
Mita.
here.
Yes.
I'm coming.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi for your kōrero, it's been so amazing. And I have a jumble of thoughts, I'm going to try and get it into a question. Like for me, I feel like I see a lot of this really fatalistic, like we're heading towards an apocalypse, we've almost kind of reached the point of no return, and I'm aware that that is like almost a tool to get people to disassociate and not engage and be like, oh well, screw it, I guess, whatever, we'll just keep going the way we're going. So I guess, like, how do we kind of combat those messages that young people are getting of just like, it's terrible, it's horrible, the world is effed, and kind of shift their perspective towards like empowering them for like the change that they can help create, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start us off real short answer, but I think the thing that really keeps me going is looking at the other young people who are going like pretty much through the exact same thing I'm going through and seeing how they're still going and seeing the really important mahi that they're doing. Even among like my group of friends, looking at each of them, there's so much work that wouldn't have been completed had they not been in their sector, in their mahi, in their university or whatever. So really drawing on people who have been going for a lot longer as well. So again, the intergenerational thing. But also reading the news less is super helpful and sort of not trying to like fall into those rabbit holes. I don't know if any of that's actually helpful, but those are the sort of small things to try and start doing, is looking at each other and seeing how important and vital the work you're doing actually is.
I don't know. 'Cause like, you know, I've been trained and educated to believe that I can solve every problem. You know, and so I don't know. We were talking about this just before we got up as well, and how we can involve youth decision making and what we can, advisory boards, like when decisions are being made and stuff like that. But there's got to be something else, you know, and I don't know what that is. And yeah, that's a pretty honest answer, yeah.
I just totally agree. It's super hard. But I think one of the areas that there's good evidence that helps, it's not that's necessarily the solution, but it does help, is what is it likely to look like for you in a year's time, or 5 years' time, or 10 years' time, or whenever it might be. And personalising it, looking at what the reality could be, because it's super scary. So, you know, some dickhead like me saying, oh, there's going to be lots more floods and things like that. Well, what it might mean is that it means we've got to raise our house, or we've got to take some actions, and that will allow us to be safe or to be resilient. I think that opportunity to engage with the process of how we move through these complicated problems is really tough. It's going to be a big, long, challenging, complex conversation, but one that's really important that our youth are at the absolute heart of and are driving it. It's for me, whilst it's scary, it's also kind of exciting because it's a generational moment.
Beautiful. Do we have time for one more question? Does anyone else have a pātai? Yes, we do. Oh, shot me ta.
Kia ora koutou. This might be a bit out the gate, so you can pass on the question. Just the cross between like the Western world and the Indigenous world, and the Indigenous lens on climate, te taiao not being lost in that translation. Do you have any like view so if you talk about hua parakore, one of the principles being wairua? Is there any like wairua strategy, or do you have any wairua kōrero? I remember hearing this kōrero from out in Melanesia, and they used to do these karakia where they felt like the coral reefs were under attack or getting diseased or whatever, and then so they used to have these random karakia, and then the underground volcanoes would like come out, and then all the pumice and stuff like that will come out of the volcano and connect itself to the coral. I mean, that's out the gate, eh? And over in Ngāti Kahununu, they had karakia where they had karakia that could cultivate the weather. Or wait, is that the right thing? I don't know. But it's like, wairua, it's like a whole another way. It might combat some of the anxiety and stuff like that. Have you heard any stories out there?
Yeah.
From a wairua perspective?
Yeah, heaps. Hi, Maddie. I got this one. There's heaps. There's heaps. It's just, just like this panel, it takes a certain amount of energy and a certain person to be here to talk about it like this. So acknowledging that firstly, and then acknowledging secondly that what you're talking about is the spiritual connection to different things, right? And how we can spiritually connect to something to spread the mauri within it to heal. So healing via mauri, healing via wairua, absolutely. That absolutely is possible, and it's talked about in Indigenous spaces. And in Hawaii, it's actually you're banned from the taro patch and touching the taro and touching the soil if you're not in a good mood. So, they fully ban you. You're not allowed to work in the taro patch if you don't, if you're not in a good mood, because they believe that if you go in there in a bad mood, you're going to do this and you're going to kill the whole patch, and that patch is going to feed X amount of people. So, that happens. One thing for you to Google later is the Japanese rice experiment. So Japanese rice experiment is we have rice into 3 containers. You place those containers in the same place with water, and you show one hateful energy, you show one love energy, and you show one no energy. And the changes within that rice proves that energy is a healer. And then if you can do that with rice, you can do it with plants. If you can do it with plants, you can do it with people. There's also it's not Netflix, it's one of the other ones. I don't watch a lot of TV, but there's a show called Heal, and there's a lot of people who are truly sick and being told by doctors and all sorts of different, brain people, bone people, all that kind of stuff, that they're not going to walk again, they're going to die of cancer, they've got weeks to live, all that kind of stuff. And then they've used their mind and their energy and their wairua to fix themselves. So if we can do that there, then we can do it with the environment, eh? So it's absolutely possible. It's just, for that space to thrive more, I think we need to have more guts in that area and just take over it. Me, I'll help with that. I'm teaching. There's a school in Weymouth that has a garden that was built by a funeral warrior about 2 years ago, and every day before they go into their classroom, they sing songs to their vegetables. And they can see the difference in the growth in plants, eh? So it's definitely happening. Definitely happening.
Love that. We'll have time for one more pātai.
tātou e ria hau tēnei no te tai rāwhiti. Ko te mea tuatai ka mihi atu kia koutou e noho ana. Hei whakawhāriki hea o koutou. Whakaaro I mua I te aroaroa. It's more of a whakaaro e hara tēnei I te tahi pātai, not a question, but more of a looking back on the pātai just before around how we embrace te tai ao from not a strength base, but in a way which relates to Aotearoa. Ko matariki tēnā, ko puanga anō tēnā. So if I think about the first holiday where we were able to go outside and we're looking straight into the environment, looking straight up at the sky. We're looking at how our gardens grow. There are kura kaupapa all around the motu doing the same awesome mahi, so if you want to connect to them, call a kura kaupapa, they'll tell you where it's at. So just wanted to acknowledge your whakaaro, but say whānau, we're actually here. The wairua is flowing straight into matariki and into puanga, and it doesn't have to be this 1 day or 2 week events. Yeah. Koina no hio. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Dana, do we have time for one more question? Sorry, I can't see the time.
Yes.
Yes. Did I have a hand here? Sorry, Mita. Ngā mihi.
Just burning off the calories.
Kia ora, I'm Jo from Marlborough Youth Trust. Thank you for the wisdom on the couch, particularly around the garden, so thank you for that, that's great. Down in Boomtown in Marlborough, we are looking at some dodgy movement in the land in time. And in regard to anxiety for our young people, equipping them with education, and there was some beautiful movement of young people stepping into leadership during the Christchurch earthquake. And so we have been very fortunate in the last couple of years to be able to run a Youth Emergency Services program. And it is a successful program in regard to equipping young people around civil defence, emergency, surf life saving. I've got a young man over there who's been part of that, and it's also a pathway in regard to employment as well for ambulance crew and things like that. However, we're wanting to add to food sustainability so that when we might be chopped off from Nelson and Kaikoura in Wellington, which is petrifying for our young people, and I'm horrified that our businesses in Marlborough don't even realise that's a risk. And so when it comes to government not communicating to people in their region of the true scientific risks, how do we break down the anxiety why is it that we're not equipping people with education? I grew up in South Auckland here, and we were always told to look at the last back page of the, Yellow pages of, have you got this in your back pocket and I think COVID probably hasn't helped our pantries much in regard to having an emergency grab bag. But I mean, if anyone here in Parliament is going back to Parliament, can you help resource our young people to have this education to break down the anxiety of being able to help themselves, help their neighbour and help their community? And having that food sustainability is what we're wanting to bring into the program this year. But, we're scratching around trying to find 15K, and I think that's nonsense when it comes to positive youth development and equipping our young people. So I guess the kōrero here is if you guys can help champion that somehow, in the beehive, that'd be great. And this will help emergency management on when it is the floods. When the floods are coming and Tipataka can help our families with food and clothing, much like what we heard yesterday about the marae during COVID. We've got to do it better now and equipping our young people so that they know what it's looking like for them.
Kia ora. Any response to that?
Well, you'll be shocked to hear that I think education is absolutely critical. And whatever form it might be, that's really important. I think the challenge that we're always going to face is there's so many risks, there's so many hazards and so on that are there, but how can we break that down to our level or our community level that makes it real and what those critical issues might be? So connecting with those people that hold the knowledge, or how that can be shared most efficiently is a key challenge for at least my sector and the things that the emergency management system's trying to do. But there is some really cool stuff out there. There's lots of cool educational resources around how our Earth works, what the some of the hazards or issues that it can create, and what you can do about it. There's a lot of investment from the likes of Tokatuaki EQC in public education campaigns, but also much more targeted work around things that might be useful for secondary school or for sometimes into the universities or other areas. We're very keen to learn more around, if it's not landing, if it's not meeting your need, how can we change it? And particularly in my, you'll be shocked again to hear, I'm keen to know what the evidence is. Like what's not working and why is it not? So we can find a way to, when we do invest our very precious and believe me, very finite dollars in this space, that it's most effective and most powerful. So love to talk to you afterwards. Kia ora.
Do we have any more partai before we wrap this up? No, more partai. Well, that's the bosses saying no. Any final words from our panelists? Or one word of advice you'd give to all our youth workers here?
Bit of advice.
Thank you. Massive thank you for everything that you do.
Absolutely. Build a garden. No, but seriously, it comes down to, there's a lot of things that can be solved. Matariki leads us into environmental observation, so building a garden will allow us to see those emergency spaces. But
nice.
Yeah, shout out to you as well.
Yeah, tautoko to both of them, but also just take your time with whatever you're doing. Just take your time.
Nice.
Yeah, well done.
Well, he tūhānea nea tēnei no te pōahoa wai katoa, kia koutou katoa, e kōrero tia pānaki tēnei kaupapa, tino whakahira kia tātou katoa no reira, nei rā te mihi atu, kia koutou katoa. O tira, for those that do not understand, all I said was, give our land back. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for our panelists e te whānau.